Hi, everybody. Welcome to English Digest. I'm Tom.
Hi, I'm Stephanie.
Now, remember, we're talking about an interactive art installation. And if you want to go see an art installation, of course, you need to hear about it first. And if you're an artist or a museum and you want people to come and check out your exhibition, then there are various ways to get people interested. You can send out information over the internet, maybe have advertisements posted on social media or whatever. Or you might send out flyers, and that's kind of what we're talking about today, kind of a description of this art installation that's taking place in Brady Park in this local location somewhere. And yes, this information can tell you more about this work of art, and you can decide yourself if you'd like to go check it out.
Yeah, in day one, it's actually part of that promotional tour, you could say. If somebody is bringing in a show, it could be a musical or a rock concert, or in this case, some art is coming to visit or is being advertised as being exhibited somewhere. A lot of times you'll see lots of things. You'll hear radio commercials, radio interviews like we did on day one. Like Tom said, there'll be flyers. There are lots of ways to publicize something, and this is one of them. So we're going to be learning a little bit more about Micropolitan, but first we're going to read through today's lesson.
International artist Andy Rosen welcomes you to experience Micropolitan. This 30-acre installation has taken over Brady Park in the city's center, allowing the public to participate in, discuss, and even contribute to the art itself in a direct way. Step into the installation, and you're in for an amazing encounter that lets you look at the urban world and natural world in a new way. The meeting of the man-made and natural worlds. Micropolitan transforms the park's beautiful natural landscapes by contrasting them with urban constructions. This is all on a scale that lets them be seen side by side. Visitors can more directly see how aspects of city life and nature affect each other. For example, how might light pollution change our sky? How does the way we gather the resources we need to live affect our world? How can the city and nature exist together in harmony? Viewers can confront these issues in a visual way, making them seem more immediate and real. Interact with the art. The installations in Micropolitan are made up of a range of materials from aluminum to paint to audiovisual programs. All of them give viewers a sensory experience, including sight, sound, and texture. You can enjoy taking photos with forced perspective paintings, make music on electronic sound pads, and more. Explore your role in the Micropolitan world and share the experience with others. Micropolitan at Brady Park, open 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. every day, September 29th to November 30th, andyrosenart.com/micropolitan.
So here we are with day two. Let's take a look at the title here, Experience an Interactive Art Installation. If you experience something, it just means you encounter it. You undergo something. Maybe it's an event or an occurrence. I experienced my first earthquake right here in Taiwan. So I went through that experience or that earthquake for the first time here. Here we're going to experience an interactive art installation. Remember, if it's interactive, it means you participate in that piece of art. I wanted to mention this on day one, and I forgot to. When we talk about installation art, we're talking about the type of art that we're going to be either viewing or talking about or studying. But if you say art installation, that's the actual piece of artwork that we're talking about. You can also just say an installation. Art installation is the type of art we're talking about. Remember, we have international artist Andy Rosen, and he's welcoming you to experience Micropolitan. So he's excited that you're there. He may not be there in person, but he's happy that people want to come and view the art and experience his latest art installation.
Yep, and the title is Micropolitan, which is kind of interesting. Usually, if we think of something having to do with a city, we think of metropolitan, but micro here means very small, so micropolitan, again, it's in a park there, and it's kind of reduced the size of the city, so you can have access to it right there in the park. And this also goes on to describe the installation. It says, this 30-acre installation has taken over Brady Park in the city center. So here, of course, we're talking about the size of some place. It's an installation that is 30 acres in size. Now, if you take 30 acres and you change that into an adjective, then you put a hyphen in there, and then you take off the S at the end. This 30-acre installation. It's an installation that is 30 acres large, and it has taken over Brady Park. So here we've got the verb phrase to take over. Usually that means someone controls something else, like this company is so big that it took over another small company. You know, it swallowed it up. It's now the owner of that other company. It has taken it over. Or, you know, Germany, of course, took over Austria at the beginning of World War II. That just means they became more powerful. But in this particular case, it just means this installation is pretty much all over Brady Park. You can still go to the park, but the art installation is going to be there too.
Yeah, another example is the recent protests that we saw in Hong Kong, where the protesters took over the streets. There were so many of them that cars or scooters, motorcycles couldn't get through. To take over, like Tom says, just means to control that particular area. So this piece of art is very, very big. It's taken over the park, and it's also allowing the public to participate in the art itself. They can discuss what they're seeing. Please don't use discuss about, guys, as long as discuss is there. Let me mention one more time. We don't say discuss about a topic. We just discuss a topic. Or you can say talk about a topic. But they can discuss this with perhaps the people they went with to see this particular installation, or maybe there are people in the park that they get to know. You know, strangers, sometimes you talk to them and become friends. So you can even contribute to the art itself in a direct way. And the way that you do that is to actually interact with the installation. We talked about what that was like in day one. Andy was suggesting that you could actually take objects and add those objects to this assembly of items that were already there. That would make you somebody who's contributing to the art itself, which is kind of fun.
It does sound like a lot of fun, and, you know, if this is interactive art, it might attract more people to go check it out. So yes, you can contribute to the art in a direct way. Step into the installation, and you're in for an amazing encounter that lets you look at the urban world and natural world in a new way. So yes, if you go to this park and you step into this installation, well, you're in for an amazing encounter. This phrase here, you're in for something, means something is going to happen to you, and it's going to be exciting, or it's going to be very influential to you. You could be in for a surprise, or you're going to be in for a shock because the boss has decided to fire you. Okay, so watch out for that. In this particular case, though, yes, you're in for an amazing encounter. You will have an amazing time when you go there.
Yeah, whoever says you're in for something has already experienced it and usually has a knowledge of what they're talking about. You're in for a treat. When you go see that musical or you go to that concert, you're in for a treat. Yeah, so you're in for an amazing encounter that actually lets you look at the urban world and natural world in a new way. Remember, it's been placed inside a park where there are lots of trees and plants and flowers. So, moving on to the next paragraph, it's entitled The Meeting of the Man-Made and Natural Worlds. If something's man-made, it doesn't necessarily mean that it was made by a man or some men. It just means that people did it. It's human. Human-made, man-made. I still say man-made. I don't have a problem with that. The natural world, of course, is nature and has less to do with people being involved. Usually the natural world is when we get out into nature. It could be the park. It could be a forest, or maybe want to take a hike on a beautiful mountain. That's the natural world. It says here that Micropolitan, that's the piece of art that we're talking about, transforms the park's beautiful natural landscapes by contrasting them with or contrasting them with urban constructions. So if you transform something, guys, you change it really almost completely. So it's something new, something different. And that's what this piece of art does to the park. And it's beautiful natural landscapes. Landscape is just the area outside that you can see in front of you. You could see someone's yard has been landscaped, which means somebody has purposely planned out where their trees are going to be planted and bushes and flowers. But here, of course, we're just talking about the park's landscapes. I'm sure someone planned the park as well. So landscapes are what you can see of an area. It usually includes the land, the countryside, things like that, and what they look like, how beautiful they are.
Yep, landscape refers to the physical features of the land and what it looks like, especially if it's beautiful. And this is kind of interesting because the word landscape is similar in meaning to scenery, but landscape, we can count that. Landscape or landscapes, but scenery, no, you can't do that. Scenery is non-count, so you cannot add an S to scenery, but landscapes you can. So that's kind of interesting. Sorry, it's kind of confusing, but that's the way it is. And of course, we've got the beautiful natural landscapes of the park, and they kind of contrast with the urban constructions. They kind of are opposite to each other, so they look kind of different. So yes, we often say that the man-made world or the artificial world will contrast with the natural world. They're kind of different. They're kind of opposite here. And so we've got the word contrast. Some people will say contrast as the verb. That's okay. But contrast here is what we're saying, and that means, yes, they're kind of the opposite to each other, and the landscapes will contrast with urban constructions. A construction is something that has been built by people, like a building or a bridge or roads or telephone poles or whatever. Those are things that people have built. So yes, the natural landscape contrasts with the urban landscape or urban constructions.
You'll often see compare used with contrast. So you want to compare and contrast something. If you compare things, you kind of look at both those things and see what's similar and what's different. And contrast just means there are some things that are completely opposite. So you're contrasting these things with the urban constructions. Yeah, it's very different. So this is all on a scale or a size that lets them be seen side by side. Remember, this was on a much smaller scale than real life, so that it could all fit into the park itself. And so when you talk about the scale of something, you're just talking about the size. If you want to see how much you weigh, you will step on a scale and it will tell you how fat or how thin you are. So this is on a smaller scale so that you can actually contrast those things with your own eyes.
Yeah, this kind of makes me think of that place out in, where is it? Is it in Taoyuan or wherever? It's called Xiaorenguo, which I think is called Window on China. And it's got all those constructions that are on a smaller scale, like some very popular buildings or constructions around the world. So they're on a smaller scale. So indeed, that's what this art installation is all about. It's a smaller scale of the urban environment, and it lets you see these things side by side, and visitors can more directly see how aspects of city life and nature affect each other. Yeah, it's oftentimes difficult to see how the artificial world and the natural world kind of contrast with each other because they're just so darn big. So this is a small scale that lets you see these things right next to each other. Now, for example, how might light pollution change our sky? We don't really know that so much because we don't really look at the sky too much when we're in the city. But yeah, there is light pollution, and that means we can't really see stars and stuff like that.
Yeah, I really miss the stars. We can see the moon, thank goodness, but I'd like to see the stars. I think there's only been one night, and I don't always look up, but yeah, I remember thinking, oh, there are some stars. It's kind of nice to see the stars. So how does the way we gather the resources we need to live affect our world? How does it change nature when we gather the resources that we need, either water, oil, things like that we're taking from the natural world? And how can the city and nature exist together in harmony? If you're existing in harmony, it just means you're getting along, you're peaceful, you're not fighting. Notice here too, guys, we can say the city, but please don't say the nature, which I have seen before here in Taiwan. Don't say the nature, it's just nature.
Nature, exactly, and the artificial world or the man-made world or whatever. And viewers can confront these issues in a visual way, making them seem more immediate and real. So there they are right in front of you, and then you can kind of understand how the natural world and the man-made world interact with each other. Now, here in the third section, it says interact with the art. To interact means you basically have a conversation with the art. You say something, it reacts, etc. So the installations in Micropolitan are made up of a range of materials from aluminum to paint to audiovisual programs. So we've got these different materials. Aluminum is how we say it in America. In England and other places, they'll say aluminium, but Americans say aluminum, which is a very light metal, which a lot of soda cans are made from. And these are also audiovisual programs. So yeah, you can hear and see things in these different kinds of presentations.
So we've got audiovisual, things you can hear and see. All of these things give viewers a sensory experience. When you talk about your senses, you're talking about sight, sound, touch, taste, things like that. Those are your senses. Sensory experience is not just seeing something, but maybe there's something you can hear, you can touch. Here we're told you can see things, hear things, and feel things. Texture is how something feels. You can enjoy taking photos with forced perspective paintings. I think I'd like to do that. I love those forced perspective pieces of art. They're just so interesting how the artist comes up with that, how he makes things seem flat, but if you move to a different position, things can suddenly appear to be 3D. Now, you can also make music on electric sound pads and more. This sounds like a piece of art that kids would enjoy too. A lot of times if you take kids to museums, they can't touch and they get frustrated because they want to touch everything. Take them to something where it's interactive and they'll be lots happier.
Indeed, so you get this sensory experience with sight, sound, and texture, the way it feels, and the patterns and stuff, and you can enjoy taking photos from those forced perspective paintings, and you'll probably have to wait in line because everybody wants to take that same picture.
Yeah.
And, of course, the electronic sound pads can allow you to make music and explore your role in Micropolitan world, in the Micropolitan world, and share the experience with others. Yes, tell people all about it, show them your pictures, and they'll want to check it out themselves. But remember, there's no real way to do that because this is fictitious. This is just for the sake of explaining what a work of interactive installation art might be like. There might be similar exhibitions here in Taiwan, so check those out. But here we've got some information in case you do want to check this out again. It's not real, but yes, it's at Brady Park. And it lists the hours there, the hours of operation, and it's going to be in the park from September 29th to November 30th. And if you want some more information, check out this website. But again, this information is just for reference. It's not real. Okay, that brings us to the end of our explanation for today. It's time now to listen to our Chinese teacher.
谢谢美语老师。Hello, my name is Shelby. 我们今天继续看装置艺术。第二句。30公顷的装置占据了 Brady Park. Take over 接管 A take over B. I take over the job. 我接管了这项工作。 既然这装置接管的公园，表示占据。逗点后面 allow 加 ing 是省略 which 而形成的分词构句，它通常用 allow 人加 to be， 允许人做什么事。后面接了3个动作，参与、讨论和贡献。contribute to something 或者 VING 贡献，句意甚至允许人们对艺术做出贡献。在表示 A 导致 B 的句型中，也可以用这个动词，例如你的建议促进了我们工作， Your suggestion has contributed to our work。 踏入这个装置艺术，你将经历一次惊奇的邂逅。第2段小标，人造世界与自然世界的相遇。 Meeting 这里是表会面， The meeting of A and B 两者的会面，例如 The meeting of goodness and evil 善与恶的会面。 At the meeting of two roads 在2条道路的交叉点。第一句，微型都市来改变公园美景。 Landscape 风景，宁静景色 The peaceful landscape。 这个字还经常当动词，表示景观美化。 The park was beautifully landscaped。 公园被美化过，或者 He is doing the landscaping。 他正在整理园地。 by 加 VING 借由某动作， contrast A with B 或者 contrast A to B 对比 A 和 B， 而 B 这里是 urban constructions 都市的建筑，这都在 on a scale 让它们能够一起被看到。 scale 尺度、刻度， on a scale 指某种规模上，加上 large 就成了大规模。观众可以直接看都市生活和自然彼此影响，例如光害如何改变天空。第6句，都市和自然如何共存 in harmony。 Harmony 是和睦， be in harmony with somebody 和谁和睦相处。若 be out of harmony with somebody 就是与谁不协调。下一句，观众能面对这些问题，以视觉的方式。动词 confront 表面对，尤其是勇敢的面对，例如 confront danger 勇敢的面对危险，与 face 或者 encounter encounter 等同义，让它们更直接真实。 immediate 立即直接的，另外 direct 也是直接的，不过别受中文影响， immediate 是指时间上马上，例如 an immediate reply 马上回应。 direct 是指具体上的，例如 a direct contact with the manager 与经理直接面对面的联系。接着下一段与艺术互动。第一句的动词 are made up of 由什么组成，被动，这些装置由各种素材组成。 a range of 表示一连串的。组成的英文一主动或被动，有好几个不同的动词可使用，例如水是由氢和氧所组成的，用被动时就可以 Water is made up of oxygen and hydrogen， 或者 Water is composed of oxygen and hydrogen。 Composed C-O-M-P-O-S-E-D。 用主动 Water comprises oxygen and hydrogen。Comprise C-O-M-P-R-I-S-E， 或者 Water consists of oxygen and hydrogen。 Consist C-O-N-S-I-S-T。 下一句，这些呢都给观众一种感官经验 sensory 知觉的，感觉丧失 sensory deprivation。 名词 sense 感受，五感就是 five senses，但是有时候身体感受的温度和实际不一样，是体感，就是 perceived temperature 感受到的温度。 perceived P-E-R-C-E-I-V-E-D 和 sense 无关。这些感受包含视觉、听觉还有触觉。 texture 材料的组织或触感，例如说 the texture of a marble 大理石的纹路。接着说，你可以拍照和这些 forced perspective 画作、照相， Forced perspective 照字面强迫透视法，它是指会产生错觉，看起来更大、更深或更远。最后，探索你在 micropolitan 的角色吧。Explore 探索，例如 explore the possibility 探讨可能性。表格是展览的资讯。以上是今天的讲解，谢谢收听。
We're going to take a quick break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Okay, guys, we've got our discussion questions we're going to talk about briefly. Here's the first one. Tom, what do you think art should do for the people who view it? And then explain your ideas.
Well, I think it should let people know there are different ways to look at the world, and there are different ways to look at the world and things inside the world. So installation art sometimes seems a little bit too much, and it kind of takes over spaces in cities and stuff like that, and people think, what is that thing doing here? Why should I be forced to look at that? Well, you can ignore it if you don't really like it, but for the rest of us, it might be something that we can go, you never see that every day. That seems kind of interesting. I never thought that we could look at the world that way. So yes, indeed, I think art should sort of challenge the way we look at the world. And and then that way we can come up with our own ideas and maybe have our lives be a little better. How about you?
I want to feel something when I see art. It could be anything. I used to teach pretty regularly over at Taipei 101, and they would have art exhibitions from different artists come and go. And there was one artist that I just love. This person would sculpt people that were bigger than normal size, but they were so funny looking. They just made me laugh. And I like to be happy. I don't always like to cry. And that art just made me really happy. My favorite style of art is, I don't know, I like painting, but I also really like sculpture. And there's this particular piece of sculpture that I love, and it's on Renai Lu. It's kind of close to where I live, but it's a ballet dancer, and she is stretching over and she's touching her toes. It is so beautiful, and if I had enough money, I would buy it. What's your favorite kind of or favorite style of art, Tom?
I like kinetic sculpture, hands
dude.
down. I just like seeing sculpture that can kind of move in the wind and it changes shape and it looks different every second. There aren't enough kinetic art installations here in Taiwan. I wish I could see some more, but I do like that style of art. Okay, that brings us to the end of our lesson for today. Thank you so much for joining us. And hey, have this discussion amongst yourselves in your classes, and I bet that you'll have conversations that are way more interesting than the one we just had. From all of us here at English Digest, I'm Tom.
I'm Stephanie.
Goodbye.
Bye.